Hey everyone, it's Mega Champ again, with hopefully something that's not controversial, maybe? I just don't know anymore. It's so hard to tell. It shouldn't be. I hope it's not. I mean, it's just another Full Thoughts video. But yeah, I finished another game last night. Getting through them pretty quick now, although admittedly, a lot of these games are that are coming up here in my backlog are quote unquote shorter. They're not the 80 to 100 hour experiences, so they're not going to take me as long. But yes, it's true. Last night I got through Ori and the Will of the Wisps. You see, I do play Xbox Game Studios games. I just play them on other platforms when they go to them. In this case, the Nintendo Switch. Although, let's be brutally honest at this point. The Nintendo Switch is probably going to now be the only other platform that Xbox Game Studios games get sent to. And I don't know what that means in terms of Crash and Spyro, because the Switch is not exactly the platform I want to play them on, but obviously there's no way to know with certainty, but that's just the feeling, what it seems like. Only time will tell, but that's once again not the point. I have finished Ori and the Will of the Wisps for the Nintendo Switch. I always seem to say this. We'll see if it's accurate this time, because every time I say this, the literal opposite happens and I go 40 minutes plus, but there's actually not a whole lot for me to say about this game, but we'll see. As always, I'll be going through the story of the game, the characters of the game, the world of the game where the game takes place, the graphics, and the gameplay. And maybe something extra, if I feel like it. No, I will be. So, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This is the sequel to the first game that came out, which is Ori and the Blind Forest, which is also on the Nintendo Switch, but that version is called Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition. It's a sequel to that game. And honestly, this game is pretty great. A really enjoyable experience overall, and definitely more fun and easier than that goddamn first game was. Brutal honesty right there. So, the story of the game, not much to say, and I'm gonna have to be really careful here to not give full game spoilers. I'm not even kidding, because of how the game ends, but, the story of the game is pretty simple. It takes place after the events of Ori and the Blind Forest, where, your cute adopted owl child, also known as Ku, hatches and you take care of him as a new family. And goddamn, it's so goddamn cute. What? I'm allowed to say things are cute. I don't care that I'm a guy, that I'm male. Things are cute sometimes. I think some Pokemon are cute. I think some Digimon are cute. You don't get over that sort of stuff. Well, I don't, at least. But the story is pretty simple. It takes place after the events of Ori and the Blind Forest. And unfortunately, as you try to help Ku learn how to fly, of course something happens. Why would something not happen? And Ori... I don't know why I have to say this, point that out, because it's the literal name of the game, but Ori and Ku get separated, and originally at first, the point of the game is to find your cute adopted owl child, but then things kind of progress, to put it extremely lightly, from there, and it turns into kind of similarly to Ori and the Blind Forest, maybe even similarly to other Metroidvania games, or this specific franchise at least. in which you have to kind of save a part of the world. Not the full world. You kind of already did that in Blind Forest for this franchise. But a specific part called Niwen. That's Niwen. So stuff is going on with that, and it's decaying and or dying, and you have to help it out, and you're not exactly given a choice because of something that happens. Before I go into the characters, I did forget to mention here that, obviously this specific thing is just my thoughts and experiences and feelings and opinions on the game, and everyone's thoughts and experiences and feelings and opinions are going to be different, but a little late, but oh well. So the characters of the game, there's not much to say there either. There's really only two, technically speaking, Ori and Ku. There are obviously other characters that are important. Even some of the bosses that you end up fighting in this game, yes, there are bosses, end up actually turning out to be important. But there's really only two that are important, Ori and Ku, and it's really only Ori that's important. I mean, it's the name of the game. But what I will admit here, and this is all a brutal honesty, this game actually does a really good job with the antagonist. And that's saying something coming from me, I guess, technically. Because it does a really good job of making you hate the antagonist. Which, to put it lightly, is really not all that different from the antagonist of Blind Forest. I'm not even joking. Which is a very large, mean owl. And it hurts cute adopted owl child. Revenge! No. Boy, I wish that was actually the case. But yeah, it does a really good job of making you hate that character, and because I hated it, that's for sure. I wanted it dead. I kind of still want it dead. There's a kind of hint for you, but there are other characters of the game. There are shopkeepers, there's person who gives you maps, there's person who gives you upgrades, so on and so forth. Some of that may sound familiar to a certain subset of fans that I talk about. It's Hollow Knight. Anyway. So, obviously there are some characters that are important, but it's not really all that many. Some are obviously more important than others, and things happen to side characters that make you go, WTF, why would you do that? But somehow I can't really be surprised when it comes to this franchise. It is practically the final game of this franchise in all likelihood, so it's not all that surprising, but still a little on the ridiculous side, but that's spoiler territory, so. The world of the game, there's not much to say. Niwen has, a couple of different areas. An area full of darkness. Most of it is, again, kind of grass, but there are cave areas. There's a water area. There's a sand area. Hey, at least it has more variety than Biomutant. Wow. I just love doing that, don't I? But yeah, it does have a lot more variety, and at least it's a bit more, interesting, at least. And it's all very unique in its own way, but obviously the world is dying-ish, or on the verge of dying, so that's kind of a thing you need to be aware of, and there is some evidence of that, particularly when it comes to some of the enemies you have to take on and fight, but the world is decent for what it's trying to do, and it does a pretty decent job of explaining it and describing it and its lore. Boy, people just love that word, don't they? And stuff like that, but there's not much to really say about the world either. It's interesting, it works for what it's trying to set out and give to you mostly, and, after things happen to cute adopted owl child, You kind of have to pretty much explore all of it in order to help it. So, not much to really say there either, honestly. Um, Graphics are the game. Yeah, don't compare these graphics to Biomutant. Just don't. Because clearly it's two completely different situations, but it's a very good art style. I mean, it's a 2D Metroidvania with a very cute art style. It's similar to the art style that it had in the first game, Blind Forest, and is actually a bit of an upgrade, and really is an upgrade if you ask me, over the first game. It's a bit more 3D-ish, if that's even a word. Um, Whereas Blind Forest was mostly and pretty much 2D, but this has 3D ish moments to it and is a bit more 3D like, but it's still mostly a 2D Metroidvania type game. But the graphics still work greatly for this game and still makes everything very pretty and very colorful and works for what they're trying to portray. So that's, again, all that really matters. Obviously, the graphics in Biomutant are better, but everything kind of just, you know, combined together for this game that made everything work. Whereas in Biomutant, about really the best thing you can say about it is it's really pretty graphics, and that can only go so far, as I have already discussed. So, but the graphics work for what they're trying to do in this game. Not much to say about the gameplay. It's a Metroidvania. I know I've said that word a couple of times. If for whatever reason you don't know what that word means, it's a combination of Metroid and Castlevania. It's the 2D games that are similar to Metroid and Castlevania. You could also compare it to Hollow Knight, I guess, where it's like a map-based area with different parts of the map that you have to explore to, unlock pretty much, or get an idea of to what the map looks like, unless you buy the map from the character I mentioned previously, of course. And that's really all that really needs to be said about it. I don't know if all Metroidvanias are the same, because it's not a type of game that I normally play, which I have also stated previously. So I don't want to say all Metroidvanias are the same, because I'm more than likely going to be incorrect. But if they're basically all the same, then I would assume that it's all kind of a map-based area that has different areas that you go to in order to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And each area has different level-ups and power-ups and stuff of that nature to pretty much make your character stronger in order to go to other areas and do other things and unlock more collectibles and all that fun stuff. Also, as I kind of already mentioned there, this game, it gave me Hollow Knight training. I wish I was joking. I'm being completely serious. It gave me Hollow Knight training. Because there's a character that sells you maps, and there's an ability that lets Ori heal damage done to him or her, that heals damage done to it. Let's keep it at that. So yeah, it's very Hollow Knight-like. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, okay? I'm not. It's just that it feels like all this stuff is trying to get me to play Hollow Knight. Is it going to work? I don't know, probably not, but it did feel like throughout this entire game it was giving me Hollow Knight training with some of the mechanics in it, especially since the main weapon that you have with Ori is kind of a sword-like weapon. Yeah. I don't think anything else really needs to be said there. But again, it's not a bad thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just feels like it was giving me Hollow Knight training, but I probably should have at least tried to play that game instead of literally dropping it one day before I was going to start playing it, because I felt the game is was too hard for me. And you know what I did? I replaced it with Ori and the Blind Forest. And you know what happened? I was still extremely frustrated with Ori and the Blind Forest. So maybe there wouldn't have been that much of a difference, but I still kind of feel like Hollow Knight is too hard for me. I don't know if that's the case or not. That's just how I feel. If there was an easy option or easy difficulty option for Hollow Knight, then maybe. But there is no difficulty option for Hollow Knight. And there is for Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. So there you go. Speaking of which, I ended up playing Ori and the Blind Forest originally on normal, but once I started getting way too frustrated, I decreased it to easy, and luckily the game allowed me to do that, but this game does not allow you to switch the difficulty. I played it on normal, and I beat it on normal, so there you go. I beat Ori and the Will of the Wisps on a higher difficulty than the difficulty that I beat the first game on, but the first game is a lot more frustrating. Which kind of brings me to my next topic, which I kind of mentioned at the start, in that this game is actually a lot easier and a lot less frustrating than the first game. Don't get me wrong though, there are definitely frustrating moments in this game. The escape portions in this game where you have to escape something, escape a monster, escape a boss, escape in general, they're still very ridiculous in this game and very difficult and took me several attempts. But obviously eventually I get through it. And another frustrating part about this game is that the bosses are very hard. Like I said, yes, there are bosses. Not a lot, but there are a couple, and the bosses are also very frustrating in this game and took me several attempts. Even the final boss, even though I wanted to beat the hell out of it the entire game, I didn't really get that pleasure when it finally came down right to it, because it was an overall frustrating boss like the rest of them were. Unfortunately. Obviously, though, you persevere and you keep trying until you do it, even if it was very control throwing inducing. I don't even tend to be that type of person, but God, I wanted to do it so badly for that final boss, I swear. But I resisted somehow. But overall, I would definitely say that this game is much easier, much easier than the first game. Because in the first game, it felt like literal every couple of minutes I was hitting a very large brick wall, and it would take me forever to smash my way through it. So basically, every couple of minutes I felt like I was getting frustrated. That didn't happen here. It did happen on a couple of occasions, but like I said, I kind of treated it like a Crash game, a Crash Bandicoot game, in the sense that I kept trying and I kept persevering and I kept persisting until I did what it was I wanted to do and needed to do. So I guess that's really all that matters, but you do have to keep in mind that this is just my experiences, and I don't really consider myself very good at Metroidvanias, because it's not a game style, game form. I don't even know what you want to call it, but it's not a game that I normally play. Metroidvanias is not really a game or games that I play. Except in this case, because it was very cutesy, and I wanted a Hollow Knight replacement, so... But, so, you can pretty much, I guess if you want, chalk it up to just me being bad at Metroidvanias, if you want, and that's probably fair, but, you know, everyone has a different skill level, so... But overall, this game was very enjoyable. I do kind of wish that when because these two do reunite, like I said. I do kind of wish it let you do more with these two together than what it did. In all brutal honesty, that's probably the one negative thing I can say, other than it being a bit too difficult at times and the bosses being way too difficult at times. I do kind of wish the Ori Ku stuff had happened a lot sooner and a lot longer than what originally happens in this game, because I really liked that section. It's just so good and so great, and I wanted more of it, and then they took it away from me, and then I wanted to beat the face of the giant owl. Beat the face in of the giant owl, so. But, I do kind of wish they had done that a bit more, if you want me to be critical or a bit negative, instead of being constantly positive sometimes, or constantly negative all the time in some cases. But those are kind of my critical things or negative things to say about it. A little too frustrating at times, bosses way too difficult at times, but that could just be skill based because I don't play Metroidvanias and don't consider myself good at Metroidvanias. And I kind of wish the Ori and Ku stuff had happened a bit more and a lot longer. But other than that, it's a very enjoyable game, much more enjoyable than the first game. And the music in this game, just to touch on it very briefly here, is actually very good. A lot better than I was expecting, even, honestly. Is it something I would listen to every day? No. But it's very good and very pretty and very relaxing at times. I'm not saying the music in Blind Forest wasn't this as well. It was, it really was. But it's hard to really enjoy stuff like that when you're getting frustrated every couple of minutes. So it's kind of hard to enjoy something like that, and it doesn't help. For me, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Stuff like that just does not help me. So I was definitely able to enjoy the music in this game a lot more than the music in Blind Forest. So it stuck out a bit more for me and was very good at in many different instances and many different times. So the other thing I will say critically about this is the way the game ends. And I'm going to have to be very careful here to avoid spoilers in case you want to play this franchise for yourself. I'm not saying the way the game ends is bad. I'm not. I'm really not. Please don't take this the wrong way. It's just that when games do this, and this is the best way, and this is the best hint I can give for it without outright spoiling it. I've talked about games that end like this before in a previous video of a full thought video that I put out. And I gave several examples of it, actually. That's the best I can do to give you a hint that's not a full-fledged spoiler. So there you go. But it just kind of feels like to me when games end like that, it's like, well, geez, what the hell was the point? Or what was the point then? And you making me go through all of that. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It does, obviously. It really does. It doesn't mean I have to like it. So I just kind of don't like it when games end like that. But I guess this is the final game of the series and the franchise in all likelihood. So if you consider it that way, it does make sense, even if I may not necessarily like how it ended. So, but yeah, most games or most franchises try to do at least 3. Although obviously there are some that only do 2, a duology instead of a trilogy. Looks like Ori is one of those cases where it's just a duology and not a trilogy. I don't know if that's actually the case or not. All I know, or all I have read, and I don't know if this is true or not, is that Moon Studios is working on something else now that's not Ori, and is action role-playing game oriented. So it'll depend on what it is, obviously. I believe, I read somewhere, and again, I could be wrong. You can correct me if you want. I believe I read somewhere that Moon Studios is quote unquote done with Ori. In other words, the franchise is over. And considering how this game ended, that makes sense. I don't know if they could, or even should really, considering how this game ends, could or should do another game. I mean, they could. It would have to be on another character. I wouldn't mind a coup game, honestly. But other than that, I don't think there's going to be another game in this franchise because of the way the game ended. But I guess anything is possible at the end of the day. But because of how the game ended, I just can't see it happening. But like I said, we'll see. So overall, this game is very good. It really is, and it was much more enjoyable than Blind Forest was, for me at least. Story was really decent and very emotional at times. It didn't make me cry, but some things that happened that may or may not make you emotional. And then the characters are fine, although it's really only two that are important, other than a couple side characters and them doing a really good job at making you hate the antagonist. World is pretty decent for the most part. Good lore for it, really. Good variety. Made sense for what they were trying to do. Graphics are fine. It worked for what they were trying to portray. I mean, Metroidvanias are mostly 2D games anyway, because that's kind of why they're called Metroidvanias. 3D games are mostly like, Mario Odyssey and stuff like that, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and you wouldn't really call that a Metroidvania. You would call that a 3D platformer. So the graphics work for what they're trying to portray, and it's still a very good art style, and an art style that I do kind of like, but whether I'd play more games of it kind of depends on difficulty and the type of game, obviously. So, and gameplay was fine. Gives Hollow Knight training. Very fun. More fun than the first game. It's a Metroidvania. I'm just not very good at Metroidvanias. Because of the fact that this game gave me Hollow Knight training, does that mean I'm going to play Hollow Knight now? Well, I kind of already answered that, but the answer to that question is no, probably not, because I still feel like the game is too hard for me. But I guess only time will tell. I wish there was a demo or something that I could play for a couple of hours that would time me out, because that would definitely help me decide on if it's something that I could play or not. But, oh well, I guess. Overall, I would probably give this game an 8 out of 10, a solid 8 out of 10. Mostly because Metroidvanias are not things that I normally play, and it was kind of overly frustrating at times, but very cutesy, very good, very enjoyable. That's all that really matters. So as you can see, it got a higher score than that last thing that I put out was, so I haven't done this with all the other games that I've played, but I guess it's something I can start doing, as I'm sure you noticed up here. But if you want to see the Metacritic scores, here they are. This is for the Switch version, obviously. So obviously they're a bit higher than what I gave it, but these are probably, Metroidvanias is mostly get pretty decent reviews for the most part, from what I've seen at least. Again, I could be wrong, but I mean, again, they're just averages, but here's the Metacritic score if you want to see it. You can go to the website yourself if you want to read it more thoroughly or see scores for it on other platforms, but there's the Metacritic score if you want to see it and compare to what I gave it. But yeah, overall it's a pretty great game. I did enjoy it. And that's it, really. It's unfortunate that this franchise is at an end. I will admit that. R.I.P. Will I play other games like this? Depends. If it's something similar to this, then maybe, but I'm not going to say definitively, because, like I said, Metroidvanias is not game style that I normally play or consider myself good at. So, but yeah, great game, good job, so on and so forth. Alright, so next up for me is a very short game that I'm probably not going to make a video about, and that's Astro's Playroom. It comes for free on the PlayStation 5. It did for me, at least. And it's a very cutesy, really easy platinum game that's also a platformer. So that has two things going for it: an easy platinum trophy, and a cutesy platformer. Why not? It says it only takes about 4 hours to get the platinum, so it'll probably take me longer. I don't know why these games take me longer than what these so-called hours claims state, but it's a game that has an easy platinum and it's a cutesy platformer. Did you expect me not to play it? So I probably won't be putting out a full video for this because there's kind of no point because it's too short. So the next video I'll be doing is for Sackboy: A Big Adventure, which is, again, a cutesy platformer. With the thing from Little Big Planet. I didn't play any of the Little Big Planet games, and really the only reason I'm even playing this is because it came with the PlayStation 5 pack that I got. You know what I mean. Like, when I got my PlayStation 5, it came with 2 games with it. That's what I'm talking about. Well, actually 3, but one I'm never going to play. It came with Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Ratchet and Clank with Rift Apart, and a third game. And the reason I got the combination thing when I finally got a PlayStation 5 was because I wanted Ratchet and Clank, so it was kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and it came with an extra cutesy platformer. We all know I like cutesy platformers with Crash and Spyro, even if Crash can be difficult at times, and Spyro can be too. But it's a cutesy platformer, so of course I'm going to play it. So 2 cutesy platformers here coming up that are pretty short for the most part, but it'll take me a long time because, you know me, I take longer than I probably should, and I like to explore and try to find extra stuff and collectibles and stuff. So those are the next 2 games. The only one I'll probably be doing a video on is Sackboy, and the only one I'll probably be streaming is Sackboy, so there you go. So those are the next 2 games for me. So I'm finally getting to the PlayStation 5, playing official, quote-unquote, PlayStation 5 games that aren't free upgrades, like Final Fantasy VII Remake or Biomutant. So, my first official couple of PlayStation 5 games. So there you go, that's all I got for my full thoughts for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Great game. It's just unfortunate that this franchise is at an end. Will I play other games like that? It depends. If you want to recommend some to me, go ahead. Whether I will listen or not, TBD. And I'm very well aware of Hollow Knight because I just talked about it. I just feel like it's too hard for me. But you do whatever you want. You can play it or not. And everyone's thoughts, experiences, feelings, and opinions are going to be different at the end of the day. So, but it's a great game. And I would honestly recommend it. It's very cutesy. And the story is very emotional in both games. So there you go. Those are my full thoughts on Ori and the Will of the Wisps for the Nintendo Switch. Until next time, this is Mega saying next time I'll be providing you with more unlimited guidance. So damn cute. Wait, what? Anyway. Bye!